Face to Face stayed in the top 100 for 67 weeks. Known overseas as Angel City, they impressed American audiences with the intense, raw energy of their performances. For 20 years, the Angels were one of Australia's leading hard rock acts, attracting legions of punters into the pubs.
Brisbane seemed to produce bands that were more popular overseas than in Australia. The Saints, the Laughing Clowns and the Go-Betweens gained international cult status and critical acclaim. After their important contribution to the genesis of London punk in 1976, the Saints fractured into two bands. Singer Chris Bailey kept the Saints' name and veered towards rhythm and blues. Ed Cooper formed the Laughing Clowns, playing a volatile mix of jazz and loud rock. The Go-Betweens left Brisbane and based themselves in the UK. Their acoustic rock sound, thoughtful lyrics and female musicians defied the musical fashion of the time. The Vinyls grabbed public attention late in 1981 when their first single, Boys in Town, a frenetic female teenage anthem, became a top 10 hit. More exposure came when they appeared in and provided the soundtrack for the Australian film Monkey Grip. Their first album, Desperate, was a solid debut and got rave reviews internationally. The Vinyls made an impact at the Narara Rock Festival in February 1983 and spent much of that year touring America and Australia. Lead singer Christina Amphlett is the focus of the band. Her school uniform, pouting gestures and husky voice created a powerful and sexual stage presence. Songwriters Amphlett and Mark McEntee have created a series of hard-hitting pop hits. The Vinyls' biggest hit in America came in 1991 with I Touch Myself.
In Melbourne, there was an outburst of new bands inspired by British pop stars like Elvis Costello. Around inner city Carlton and the beachside suburb of St Kilda, a distinct school of music developed featuring R&B influenced bands such as Jojo Zep and the Falcons, The Sports with the enigmatic frontman Stephen Cummings, and the Paul Kelly-fronted High Rise Bombers. With the veneer of punk still clinging to them, new bands experimented with adventurous music at unglamorous venues like the Jump Club and the Prince of Wales. The Boys Next Door were Nick Cave's notorious garage band, which transformed into the Birthday Party. Deranged and aggressive, they gave Melbourne an image that was intellectual and dark. When they moved to London in 1980, they were hailed as brilliant.
Early in 1983, Men at Work had the #1 single and album in America and England. 3 years earlier, they were the resident band at the Cricketers Arms Hotel in Richmond. This rapid rise to unprecedented success came from a combination of good luck, good timing and good songs. It was the hit Down Under which hurtled them briefly onto the international stage. Its quirky ochre lyrics and happy-go-lucky optimism charmed the world. Men at Work's first album, Business as Usual, stayed at #1 on the American Billboard charts for 15 weeks, winning them a Grammy and heaps of other awards. Although their time at the top was short, Men at Work's achievements sparked a lot of overseas interest in Australian music.
Mental as Anything formed when a group of Sydney art students talked the local publican into providing free drinks as payment for a gig. They played on top of a pool table. Signed to new label Regular Records in 1978, the band's first EP became a cult classic. With 4 songwriters and singers in the band, the Mentals were never short of great original material. They still hold the record of having more top 40 singles to their credit than any other Australian band. The Mentals' witty lyrics and stage antics provided an amusing alternative to conventional rock star posturing. As well as designing many of their own record covers and posters, all the band members are highly successful visual artists. The band continues to tour and record, scoring a hit with the song Mr. Natural in 1995.
In the late 70s, many Sydney bands appeared under the banner of post-punk or new wave. When the seminal Radio Birdman broke up, members resurfaced in a number of other groups like the Hitmen, the New Christs, the Visitors and New Race. The Celibate Rifles, the Thought Criminals and the Lipstick Killers wielded furious buzzsaw guitars. Punters flocked to see Midnight Oil and the Divinals play driving rock. Less confronting was the fresh pop sound of the Sunny Boys and the Numbers. Jimmy and the Boys confronted audiences with bondage and drag. XL Capri parodied the kitsch classic My City of Sydney. Both bands played at the inner city venue Stranded, home to much of the new wave.
When Split Enz broke up in 1984, Neil Finn started a new band and went looking for an overseas record deal. With Paul Hester on drums and Nick Seymour on bass, Crowded House became the perfect vehicle for Neil's songwriting. The first Crowded House album overflowed with bouncy, neatly crafted tunes and showcased Neil's ability to write effortless pop melodies with a quirky twist. The album was a sleeper, selling poorly until American radio stations began to play the track Don't Dream It's Over. It was released as a single and went to number 2 in the States. Their next 3 albums steadily increased the band's following around the world until their breakup in 1996. Crowded House never relied on weird haircuts, stage pyrotechnics or bad boy behaviour. Just good songs performed with fun and warmth.
One quirky Melbourne band became unlikely suburban beer barn favourites. When hunters and collectors started out, they seemed unconcerned at appealing to a mass market and created unusual musical arrangements that featured lots of muscular brass and industrial strength percussion. The band's mystique was heightened by their enigmatic, groundbreaking film clips. Their music, image and attitude were tough and confronting. With the release of the 1984 live album Way to Go Out, the Hunters refined their distinctive sound and suddenly found mainstream success. The ballad Throw Your Arms Around Me is now considered an Oz rock classic and was once shortlisted by radio station Triple J as a replacement for the Australian national anthem. One of the greatest live bands Australia has produced, Hunters and Collectors have toured many times in the USA and England. They remain one of our most enigmatic and credible musical units.
In Excess was stadium rock in the 1980s. When Michael Hutchence pranced, postured and snarled to a sellout crowd at London's Wembley Stadium, it was the end of a musical apprenticeship that began in the sweaty pubs of Australia. Young, talented and ambitious, In Excess had spent 4 hard years developing a strategic plan for global success. By the mid-1980s, their blend of guitar-based rock with funk rhythms made them international stars. Their 1987 album, Kick, sold 9 million copies and spawned 4 top 10 singles in the USA. With an image carefully crafted through innovative film clips by Richard Lowenstein and a frontman who embodied the consummate rock star both on and off the stage. In Excess in the 80s rivaled U2 in the intelligent pop stakes.
Jimmy Barnes is a classic working class hero. He's the most energetic Australian performer since Johnny O'Keefe, and Barnes' concerts are wild, unpredictable events, with the singer sweating and boozing as he screams out those high notes in that extraordinary, rasping voice he's got. One of the many immigrants who transformed the Australian musical landscape, Barnesy arrived in Adelaide's suburban desert from the slums of Glasgow. His brother Swanee introduced Jimmy to the music scene at the notorious Largs Pier Hotel. Soon Jimmy was singing with his own band, the fledgling pub rock giants Cold Chisel. When Cold Chisel broke up in 1983, he hit the road immediately as a solo artist to promote albums like For the Working Class Man and Freight Train Heart. Barnesy became an icon for disaffected male youth throughout the pubs and beer barns of Australia. In 1996, he returned from self-imposed exile in Europe to crash into the top 10 yet again with his self-penned single, Lover Lover.
Few rock artists have the opportunity to reinvent themselves to appeal to a new generation of fans. One started out 30 years ago as the cute Johnny Farnham, singing Sadie the Cleaning Lady, and reigned as king of pop for 5 years. From the mid-70s to the mid-80s, his career was in the doldrums, until he recorded a selection of good, strong songs and made Whispering Jack the biggest selling Australian album ever. The cute pop star Johnny had redefined himself as a performer and become the grown-up John Farnham. Since then, his career has endured with a succession of big-selling albums. Liked and admired by many as the typical Aussie good bloke, he epitomises the cheerful, optimistic Australian spirit.
Australia's favourite girl next door becomes sex siren. A headline like that could only refer to Kylie Minogue, the Australian icon who transformed herself from Charlene the mechanic in the TV soap Neighbours into a sophisticated international performer. When she left Ramsay Street, Kylie teamed up with English hitmakers Stock Aitken Waterman. With Neighbours huge in Britain, Kylie was soon a megastar. The single I Should Be So Lucky soared to the top of the Australian and British charts. With 19 hit songs between 1987 and 1991, she became Australia's biggest ever pop success, exported to the Brits. In the 90s, Kylie took on a sexier look and signed with a hit dance music label, Deconstruction, enhancing her new grown-up image. Her liaisons with fellow Sophie Jason Donovan and in-excess bad boy Michael Hutchence kept her in the headlines. In 1996, her musical credibility was established when she sang with Nick Cave on his hit single, Where the Wild Roses Grow. Our Kylie now belongs to the world.
Midnight Oil's career began on Sydney's northern beaches. The driving guitar sounds and the manic gyrations of lead singer Peter Garrett earned them a reputation as a loud, aggressive live band, and attracted a loyal following in the packed, sweaty pubs where they played their music. The Diesel and Dust album and the classic anthem Beds Are Burning brought them international success. Their political songs and actions about Aboriginal land rights, nuclear disarmament, the environment and unemployment have shown how a rock and roll band can make social issues relevant to young people. Midnight Oil has lasted for over 20 years, keeping control of their business affairs and striving for success on their own terms without compromise. Combining political and artistic integrity with platinum-selling albums has been an unprecedented achievement.
Regarded by many as Australia's finest songwriter, Paul Kelly does not look or act like a rock star, but the quality of his work has earned him critical acclaim and public respect. Kelly was part of the thriving Melbourne inner-city music scene in the early 80s. When he moved to Sydney in 1984, he formed a new band and began to write and record at a prolific rate. Soon, songs like Before Too Long and To Her Door were being heard on radio and TV, bringing Kelly's albums to the attention of a mass audience. Kelly has written eloquent songs on Aboriginal issues and worked with Indigenous performers. In recent years, he's developed a talent for telling stories and creating characters in song. As a performer, Paul Kelly has a distinctive voice and sings with sensitivity, intelligence and passion.
In a live scene dominated by loud, distorted, subtle as a sledgehammer pub rock, a band with a refreshing sound emerged in the 1990s. The Cruel Sea began in 1989 as an instrumental group with a sound inspired by 60s surf music. They were soon joined by Tex Perkins, a charismatic singer who also fronts the Beasts of Bourbon. The Cruel Sea's music is a highly original concoction of blues, country and soul influences. They write strong tunes and give them atmospheric arrangements that are clear, precise and understated, resulting in music that draws you in rather than clubbing you on the head. Perkins' dark, moody lyrics perfectly match the band's sparse and edgy style. After the release of their third album, The Honeymoon Is Over, in 1993, the Cruel Sea scooped the pool at the ARIAs, winning awards for the Best Australian Album, Single, Song and Group.
An immensely talented songwriter, singer and guitarist, Mark Lizotta spent his youth in the USA, where he was exposed to the musical influences of early blues and 1960s soul. He formed Johnny Diesel and the Injectors in Perth in 1986, playing blues-based rock. The band moved to Sydney in search of bigger audiences and began performing 7 nights a week. Jimmy Barnes spotted Diesel and recruited him to play guitar on the Freight Train Heart album and tour. His first album, Johnny Diesel and the Injectors, became the highest-selling Australian album of 1989. Going solo as Diesel, he recorded the triple platinum ARIA award-winning Hep Fidelity album, which yielded 4 hit singles, including Love Junk and Tip of My Tongue.